Welcome to this week's Phil Steele Plus tour with 8 selections. Well, the tour goes well, having you learn how to use the website, and then the selections have been doing well. 25, 11, and 1 over the last 4 weeks. Need to get that San Francisco to hold on to their lead over Arizona to grab an NFL winner last week. Didn't happen, but 25, 11, and 1 over the last 4 weeks. And let's get started on today's tour. Now, here's the main page of philsteele.com. And to go to Phil Steele Plus, we're going to start out with some FCS. So we'll go to FBS info, team pages, and here we are with the menu. Now, if you're not familiar with the conferences, like I am familiar with the conferences, you can come down here and it's got it in alphabetical order. Not the same thing. NFL, FCS, it's all there on Phil Steele Plus. And keep in mind, these are the pages that we've been working on for, 20 years. I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars making sure all these stats and numbers are correct. And you get the benefit of it for just $39 for the rest of the year. You can use it all the way through the Super Bowl. Let's start out with our first one. We're going to take a look at a mutual opponent game, and it's going to be Syracuse against Wake Forest. Now, Syracuse comes in a 6.5-point favorite on the road, but let's take a look at they've only had 2 mutual opponents all year. Those mutual opponents have been Florida State and Clemson. Now, Syracuse this year against Florida State beat them 30-7, and they had a 201-yard edge. And by the way, when you look at these team pages, the beautiful thing about it, you've got all your team leaders right up here at the top. And if you click on individual player stats, by the way, it shows you what each guy has been doing all season long. You can see they actually pulled Dungy a couple times this year for DeVito. Dungy got injured against Florida State. DeVito came in. Here, Dungy wasn't playing well against North Carolina. DeVito came in. You can see what they've been doing all year. You can see that Dungy ran for 200 yards in the opener, but hasn't topped 100 yards since. You got all that info. Who's the top receiver? Look at this. Sean Riley, 78, 164. Custis had 162, so it's all right here at your fingertips, game by game for each team. And you can go back and get 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, all the way back, all color-coded, green and red. And all this stuff is at your fingertips for all the FBS teams, as well as the FCS, which we'll get into in a minute. But let's get back to the mutual opponents here. So as you can see, they beat Florida State 30-7. They had a 201-yard edge. They lost to Clemson by 4. They were minus 158 yards. Added up, they were plus 9.5 points per game, plus 21.5 yards per game against 2 pretty good teams. Wake Forest against those very same teams lost to Florida State 38-17. They were outgained by 116 yards. Lost to Clemson 63-3. They're outgained by 449 yards. They are minus 40.5 against these 2 mutual opponents and minus 282 yards per game. So yes, Clemson's laying 6 on the road, Syracuse laying 6 on the road, but they are worth it in this one. Did struggle at Pitt on the road here, but overall playing extremely well this season. And I remember Wake Forest banged up at linebacker as well. You can see what they're giving up yards rushing, yards passing lately. 503 yards per game on the season, which is 131 yards above what their opponents normally allow. That's number 128 in the FBS. And you can see they're depleted at linebacker. Look at these last 5 games, how they've been giving up the yards against their opponent's average. Syracuse comes in averaging 485 yards per game. So if they get 131 above that, that's 616 yards. I'm going to go with Syracuse minus 6.5 as the mutual opponent play this week. Now we'll take a look at another game here, and it's going to be San Jose State against Wyoming out in the Mountain West. San Jose State is a 2-touchdown underdog against Wyoming. Now, once again, clicking on the team pages, I like to line them up side by side. I like to put the visitor on the left. I like to put the home team on the right, and then you can compare and contrast. And look at the red for Wyoming's offense. Wyoming has struggled all year, and they're a 2-touchdown favorite here. They're averaging just 302 yards per game. Now, I will say this. In their last game, if you click on the individual player stats, Tyler Vanderwall finally went to the bench, and they brought in Sean Chambers. Chambers is a guy that can run the ball. Look at this, 100 yards rushing here against Utah State, 101 against Colorado State. And also, he hit 7 of 10 for 116. So he's a dangerous runner. Vanderwall, if we look at his rushing stats, -6, 35, -38. So they now have a quarterback that can run, and that did boost their offense in the last game. They put up 34 points, 407 yards on Colorado State last week. So that's the only caution I have for this one. Nico Evans is a pretty good back, as you can see, 979 yards, 6.6 yards per carry. San Jose's got a decent, not great run defense, but keep in mind, Army's an option team. San Diego State always runs the ball well, and they're only allowing 4.2 yards per carry. I think that's an improvement over last year. Last year was 5.4. And last year when they played Wyoming, it was the last game of the season. San Jose State beat Wyoming 20-17 in that game. Now, for this season, San Jose is actually playing better than you would expect. You look at their record, they only have one win all year. Came last week, game against UNLV. Let's see what happens statistically to them. We see Josh Love hit 25 of 36 for 335, one of his best games of the year. Tyler Nevins running for 103 yards. So they're getting their offense going as well for this one. I want to point out a couple of games. Washington State's a pretty good team. They actually covered against Washington State. They only lost 31-0. They were getting more than that. But Oregon, a very good team on the road in Autzen Stadium. They only lost 35-22 by 13 points. That's less than they're getting more points here against Wyoming than they lost to against Oregon. When they played San Diego State on the road, San Diego State, I feel better. They are definitely better than Wyoming this year. Only lost to them by 3 and actually had a 2-yard edge in the game. That's impressive. And this Army game is a bit misleading. You see it's 52-3. One good feature about the Phil Steele Plus is these box scores here. Now you see it was actually 14-3 at the half. And if we click on the box score, we see that was actually 7-3. And then Army got a touchdown with 12 seconds left in the half. Now, I go through the play-by-play of every game, so I could tell you, see these Army scores here at the start of the second half? San Jose, fumble. First 4 possessions of the second half, Army turned it into a blowout, but they only had 395 yards. And I think if you look at Army on the season, 395 yards, they actually held them to 13 yards below their season average. In fact, on the year, they're holding their opponents to 27 yards above their season average, with UNLV getting that last week, but they had been in the positive frame coming into last week. And Wyoming on the season averages 102 yards per game, less than what their opponents normally allow. So you're laying 14 points here. You've got a scrappy San Jose State team that lost to San Diego State by 3, lost to Oregon by 13, just beat UNLV, got that first win. I like their quarterback in Josh Love. Defensively, no doubt Wyoming has the edge, like what Wyoming did here against Utah State. But with a weak offense going against a scrappy, tough team in San Jose State, laying 14, I'll take the full 14 this week with San Jose State. Now, we got a couple of average game grades. Remember how the average game grades got off to that great start? And I think last week I only had one average game grade. Well, I got 2 of them for you this week. And let's go to a big SEC game. It's Texas A&M against Auburn. And in this one, let's start with the average game grade. Texas A&M, number 10 in the country, 101.5 is their average game grade. Look how they've been playing all year. Great all season long. Take a look at Auburn. Their average game grade is 92.6, number 39 in the country. Just looking at the average game grades, even if you give Auburn, let's say, a 3-point home edge, that's 95.6. That says A&M should be a 6.1-point favorite, and they're a 4-point dog. A&M all season long has played tough. They played Clemson within 2. They gave Alabama basically their best game of the year. This Arkansas game, they only won by 7, but they had a 377, 248-yard edge. In fact, you'll see A&M is outgaining their foes by 134 yards per game. Let's look at the Mississippi State game a little bit closer. They did get outgained by 91 yards, and they gave up 143 yards on the ground. But in that game, they're down by 1 point. And let's see if we got the box score updated. Yes, it is. Take you back to the game. Once again, I go through the play-by-play of every game, so it's not captured here, but I can tell you what happened. It's a 1-point game, 14-13. Mississippi State faces a 3rd and 21 at their own 13-yard line. They get an 86-yard pass, and they go up 21-13. So that's 86 of the yards right there. And then A&M is down at the 6-yard line of Mississippi State, and they get intercepted in the end zone. Look at the time left, 2:17. Now their only chance is to cause a fumble. Nick Fitzgerald goes to the left. They're trying to tackle the football. He breaks through. He's got nobody behind him. A&M stacked the line, and he runs 76 yards for a touchdown. So prior to that 76-yard run, they only had 67 yards rushing against this A&M defense. A&M allowed 55, 70, 76 yards, hadn't allowed over 115 yards rushing, and if not for that fluky run at the end of the game, they'd still be under 115 yards per game rushing. Now, what does Auburn have to do to be successful? They have to run the football. Let's look at some of the games they struggled. Arkansas, they got outgained. Southern Miss, they beat by 11. Mississippi State, they lost to by 14. And Tennessee, they lost to by 6. Tennessee, not exactly a juggernaut. Now look at their rushing performance. They are not running the football. In fact, since Kerryon Johnson left the lineup, and I've used this before, they had been running the football great, been playing great football. Kerryon Johnson goes out of the lineup. Look what their run game has done, 3.4, 3.7, 2.0. And then this season, with take out the Alabama State, they're an FCS team, 3.3, 3.4, 2.5, 2.7, 4.3, and 3.7. Now, last week they got it going. But they played Mississippi's defense, for crying out loud. Mississippi's got the weakest defense in the SEC, and they ran the ball, and they did well. Now they're going to get against a defense that stops the run, even with this misleading 143 here. A&M's the better football team. And also when you look at the series, and we can click on the series right here, look at how the home team does in this series. You can see it at a glance. Loss. These are all outright losses for the home team, and 4 of them were outright upsets in the last 5 years. And this is at your glance. This is the last 21 years. I could take you back. Let's take a look at, let's say, Auburn and Alabama, the last 21 years. That's every Alabama-Auburn matchup, color-coded green and red, home team, away team. Green, now the green means that the home team covered. The win means that the home team won the game outright. Here's outright upsets, yards for the game. This is all where they rank coming into the game. This is all at your fingertips on every single team for the season. So anyway, the first average game grades, we're going to go with Texas A&M over Auburn. They are +4 in that game. Second one we're going to look at is East Carolina and Memphis. So once again, the purpose of this is to show you Phil Steele Plus members how to use Phil Steele Plus to its best fashion. This is what I use. This is my main handicapping tool is Phil Steele Plus. I have it set up for me. All the information's at my fingertips on every game, and you could have the exact same luxury, but for just $39. And actually, you could get a discount. If we go to the homepage, see if I can figure this out this week. Go to the homepage, and we're going to go to the store. And let's see, where's it at? There's the store. Click on the store, and we're going to go to Phil Steele Plus. We're going to click on that. And here it is, $39. I'm going to order it. And we're going to view the cart here. And I've got 2. I'm just going to get 1. Update my cart. So it's $39. Now, I am going to type in the code word tackle. 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 And when I apply the coupon, it brings it down to $29. So $29. Oh, I also had the last week's code word in there, so that's not going to work. The code word is tackle, though. It'll get you down to $29 for this week, and that's for the rest of the season. That's all the way through the Super Bowl, all the way through the bowls. You will need this to break down the bowl games. So you got the bowl game, you got both team seasons side by side, you've got all this at your fingertips, and it's $29 for the rest of the year. Just put in the code word tackle. That's TACKLE. When you type in the code word tackle, you will get it for just $29 for the rest of the year. By the way, if you go to InsideThePressBox.com and do the same thing with the code word tackle, got a special for you this week. When you go there, just hit subscribe now. And as you can see, when you go to subscribe now, the weekly package is $19, $19, and $29.99. This is yours for $9.99 this week. Just subscribe now, type in the code word tackle, and you can get it. Just fill out, but you become a member. It's easy. You don't get inundated with emails or anything like that. But once you're a member, then boom, this $29.99 becomes $9.99 when you type in the code word tackle. That's at InsideThePressBox.com. All 60 games broken down. And you get my computer's forecast, yards rushing, yards passing, points. You get my take on the game, and I give you all my analysis. I mean, it's a full paragraph, and I've looked at everything on every game. You get all that analysis on every game, college and NFL. This week, just $9.99. All right, let's go back to philsteele.com and get back to our average game grades. And let's go to East Carolina and Memphis. Go to the team page here for East Carolina. Well, Memphis is the road team, so I'm going to put Memphis on the left. And I'm going to put East Carolina on the right. Let's get to East Carolina and East Carolina. All right, so when we take a look at this matchup, East Carolina is a 14-point dog at home. They don't look very good. They're a 2-5 team. I was doing a conference call for one of the award committees, and somebody brought up that East Carolina doesn't have a very good defense. And I said, not so fast. They do have a good defense. Look at this. East Carolina's defense this year is holding opponents to 106 yards below their season average. They've played North Carolina, USF, Temple, Houston, UCF. They've played the cream of the crop of the AAC and probably should have a much better record. 106 yards below their season average. That's a 10th best D in the country. That's a far cry from last year. Last year they gave their opponents 109 yards per game above their season average, number 127. So they actually are playing very good defense. They held South Florida to a season low. That's what this number 1 over here indicates. That's the season best against USF, season best against Old Dominion, season best against Houston, season best against UCF. So that's a good defense. Offensively, I think they made a switch at quarterback, you'll see. Their quarterback had been Reed Herring, and then last week they went with Holton Allers, who hit 29 of 53 for 408 yards against UCF. Now, the UCF game, well, first of all, let's look at this. They out first downed USF 24-9. I watched that game. They should have won the game. They ended up losing by 7 somehow, some way. You go back to this UCF game in the last one, and we'll click over here. This made the bad beats on Scott Van Pelt on SportsCenter. It is 23-10. They're getting 21.5. They are at the USF 4-yard line. They try a jump pass. Quarterback fumbles it. They pick it up and return it for a touchdown, 94 yards. Fluky. That's with 10 minutes to go. 30-10. They're still covering. And then UCF gets the ball. They're just running out the clock. They hand off, simple run play. Once again, a big, long 74-yard run. And all of a sudden, it looks like a blowout, but it was anything but. Had they scored that touchdown on the jump pass, 23-17 in the fourth quarter it would have been. So this is a good East Carolina team, very underrated. Had some tough losses this year. Now, Memphis, they played UCF tough as well. They actually led that game. If you go back and look at the UCF game, Memphis had the lead here, 23-14, 30-14. It was 30-17, and then UCF got it to 30-24 and took the lead with 12-14 left and held on. Memphis probably could have beaten UCF at home in that one. They ran into the Missouri buzzsaw, which is Drew Lock always does well against teams. I've pointed that out every week. Does well against teams that are non-Group of 5 bowl teams. You look at the other games for Memphis, their defense has given up 24 yards above their opponent's average. So you have a defensive home dog here in East Carolina. And if you look at the average game grade, Memphis is 88.3. If you gave East Carolina the 3-point home edge, that's 82. That's saying Memphis by 6.3, less than a touchdown. East Carolina's getting 13 points, 14 points here. Take East Carolina plus the double digits over Memphis as an average game grade play. Now let's move on to a situational play this week. And we're going to take a look at one of the week's bigger games. It's Notre Dame at Northwestern. And do you know Northwestern could actually get to the Big Ten title game for the first time ever? That's exciting, and they have deserved it. Beat Wisconsin 31-17. I will say the Wisconsin had their backup quarterback. You have to point that out. That's part of the reason that they struggled. They had to give a first-time quarterback as starter. They only got by Rutgers by 3. Nebraska, they beat by 3 in overtime, and that's a game they trailed Nebraska. They were down 28-14. These things are invaluable, aren't they? And here's your game recap of it as well. I don't write these. These are from the AP generally. But You look at Nebraska, 28-14. They're up over Wisconsin. Wisconsin comes back and ties the thing. It was 31-24. Wisconsin tied it with 12 seconds left to force overtime and won it with a field goal. Earlier this season, they played a good game against Michigan, but look at the yards. They were outgained by 174 yards. In fact, on the year, they're only plus 5 yards, but they're 5-3. And if they beat Iowa, Minnesota, and Illinois, they are in the Big Ten title game for the first time. Now, does this week's game affect that at all? No. This game is meaningless. If they beat Iowa next week, they will be in the Big Ten title game. If they win or lose against Notre Dame, they're not going to the college football playoff. They lost to Duke, Akron, Michigan. No playoff. They could win the Big Ten. No playoff. Notre Dame, meaningless. Big Ten championship. Can't get any bigger. Can you imagine Northwestern Big Ten champs? They can get there if they beat Iowa next week. All right, let's take a look at Notre Dame. Now, Notre Dame last week played Navy and led 27-0 at the half. Led up, rested a little bit. Meanwhile, Northwestern's going to overtime against Wisconsin with Iowa on deck. This is a Notre Dame team that had a bye 2 weeks ago. Led 27 at the half. They are fresh. They are ready. Last time they've traveled into a hostile environment, they beat Virginia Tech 45-23. Enter Sandman, all that stuff. Gotta love the way they've been playing since Ian Book took over. Book against Navy. After having an off game against Pitt, and by off game, 26-32, but he did have 2 interceptions. How about 27-33 against Navy for 330 yards? Dexter Williams, remember he was suspended the first 4 games. 161, 178. He had an off game against Pitt and then 142 against Navy. So you've got a Northwestern team that's given up 4.3 yards per carry, 63% completions. Notre Dame clearly has the defensive edge in this one, and I think Notre Dame clearly has the offensive edge. Notre Dame can run the football, 4.4. Northwestern has gotten a boost. I will point this out. Look at Northwestern's run game. When Larkin started out the season well, then when he got injured, they had no run game. And they weren't even trying to run. But Isaiah Bauer, who only had 1 carry, he had 108, 117 yards the last 2 games. Isn't this great? You've got all this information at your fingertips. You got Bowser is running the football better, but I mean, let's face it. You got to keep Thorson. You got to keep Bowser. You got to keep these guys healthy and ready for Iowa 2 weeks from now, which is the game that really will determine the Big Ten West. And if they beat Iowa, they pretty much have smooth sailing. They'll beat Minnesota and Illinois and get there. Plus, they'll hold tiebreakers over all the other big guys in the division. So it'll be basically their division. They'll have beaten Purdue, beaten Wisconsin, beaten Iowa. Iowa's a huge game. It's next week. Notre Dame, they need just to win out. If they win out, they're in the playoff. No ifs, no ands, no buts. Situational play, I'm going with the better team, Notre Dame, on the road, -10 with the situational edge. All right, FCS actually lost a game last week, guys. 7-1. Kennesaw State beat us. We were getting 23.5. Kennesaw State tucked in that late touchdown and won by 28. But how about the other game? Colgate against Georgetown. I called for it to be 38-0. Showed you the total domination. Let's see what the actual stats turned out to be. Let's see. We called for 38-0. Let me go to FCS. It's easier that way. I'm just going to go to the FCS team pages. There we are. And let's go find that Colgate game because that was just a beautiful game. And I pointed out how they will shut down. Colgate's not updated. All right, so I can't show you the Colgate game. It's not updated. That'll be updated later today. When you get a chance, go to your FCS team pages, look at the Colgate page, and you will see the total domination. They did beat Georgetown 38-0, and it was total domination. Let's take a look at your 2 plays this week. Now, the first one is mostly a computer play because when I broke it down, I was looking for some big-time edges to see. I didn't see any major edges, things to point out by looking at Phil Steele Plus. But the computer sure likes Princeton this week, -7 over Dartmouth. And let's see, I've opened up Princeton, so let's open up Dartmouth over here. And I did it backwards. Princeton's at home. I normally put the home team on the right. I didn't today. Princeton beat Butler 50-7. Monmouth is a good team. They beat them 51-9. Columbia 45-10. These guys beat Columbia as well, but only 28-12. They were plus 42 yards, and Princeton was plus 327 yards. They beat Brown 48-10. Didn't play Brown. They beat Harvard by 8. They beat Harvard by 7. They beat them on the road. They beat them at home. And they beat Cornell 66-0. They have not played Cornell. Dartmouth is undefeated. They're playing well, undefeated. Princeton's just obliterated everybody. Last week, I almost used Princeton Cornell. The computer had it up there as one of its top plays. I had won with Cornell a couple weeks ago prior with an outright upset win, so I didn't use it. But now the computer is top play this week. It's calling for Princeton to win this game 37-19 with a 447, 329-yard edge. And Princeton's just a 7-point favorite at home. So you can see they're at home here against Dartmouth. Dartmouth is a very good team this year, but my computer just is absolutely in love with Princeton, and it's got them winning this game 37-19, and they are -7. Now, this next one, my computer likes, but I found some interesting things on the game when I take the top 10 teams and put the two teams side by side and see what I can find. I found some good stuff on this game, so we're going to use this one. Computer has Jacksonville. There's Jacksonville and there's Jacksonville State. This is Jacksonville U, which is in Jacksonville, Florida, and they are just a 1-5 team. But the computer's got them beating Butler tomorrow, 33-30, with a 434 to 328-yard edge. So I bring that up because Butler is favored. Now Butler's got more wins on the season, but they have lost their last 4 games. And Jacksonville State has lost their last 5. And you're thinking this is pretty peculiar because, and once again, FCS, same thing, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, is all the way back to 2010. You can look at every box score on every game, color-coded green and red up until that last year. Last year, when Butler played Jacksonville, they handled them at home, 37-22, and they had a 423, 382-yard edge. So what impossible thing did I see to like Jacksonville in this game besides the computer? Well, here it is. Look at how Jacksonville ran the ball last year. Very good. Look at how Butler run defense was last year. They were giving up 71, 21, 34, 4. And remember, green and red makes it so easy. I just glanced down, saw this green, then looked at it closer and saw these single digits. They were giving up 120 yards per game on the ground, 3.7. Going up against a team that runs well, the defense did it. The solid run defense. They gave up 242 yards, which is the second highest total on the season. But if you give up 242 to Jacksonville, you're doing well. Let's look at Butler's defense this year. Holy cow, what a difference. They must have lost a lot of guys at graduation. 6 yards a carry, 7.4, 5 yards a carry, 5.9, 7.0. They're giving up 5.4 yards per carry in 5 big red games like this. Jacksonville has a first-year head coach in Ian Shields, and they're running the football well, and they're actually playing better. With a first-year coach, you'd expect a slow start and then start to get better. They had a close loss to Marist, close loss to Stetson, and then they have a mutual opponent recently, San Diego. Jacksonville played San Diego and actually outgained them. Look at this, 487 to 422 against a good San Diego team in their last game, plus 65 yards. Meanwhile, Butler played that same San Diego 2 weeks ago, got outgained by 196 yards, and lost 42 to 13. So I'm seeing Jacksonville playing in good current form. I see Jacksonville running the football extremely well. I see Butler's defense is weak. Butler's lost 4 in a row, all by big margins. And remember the Miami Dolphins? The Miami Dolphins this year have a good record at home. It's because of the heat and humidity of Florida versus teams from the north. It's really helped them, especially in the fourth quarter. It's only going to be 70, but still 70. Hey, I live in the north, and Butler is from Indiana, so it's been chilly. And now they're going to be playing in 70 degrees in the sun in Jacksonville, and that gives you a nice fourth quarter edge as well. So run game versus weak run defense after they had a great run defense last year. They're playing in better current form than Butler. The computer has Jacksonville winning the game and having a 106-yard edge, and they're getting points here. They're getting 1.5 points. I'm taking Jacksonville plus 1.5 over Butler as the FCS play. And now, we got all this on the FCS, we got all that in the FBS, but hey, Phil Steele Plus covers you in the NFL as well. And let's go take a look at the NFL. First off, you go to the homepage, we got blogs up there every day. Some pretty neat blogs to look at as well. College and football, offense, defense, strength of wins, pains of losses is pretty neat. Come down here and you look at who teams have beaten. You get credit for every opponent's win, the FBS win that they have. And you also, for any team that has a loss, like Michigan's lone loss was to Notre Dame, you get credit for all of Notre Dame's losses. Well, Notre Dame hasn't lost, so they have no losses. Same thing with Georgia Southern. They have one loss. It was to Clemson. They have no losses. But this week, I have the NFL offense and defense YPG up here. And Minnesota comes in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the sixth best in the NFL, plus 43 against their opponent averages. The Detroit Lions are down here, minus 4.8. But there's more to it than just that. It's on the season, it likes Minnesota. But last 4 weeks, it really likes Minnesota. Situation, you got to like Minnesota. So we're going to go into this Minnesota-Detroit game. I'm going to put my home team on the right, Minnesota. I'm going to take the visitor, put them on the left. Let's get the Lions here. Oh, you know one thing I didn't point out in college? Let me point it out real quick before I get into the NFL. And I don't know how many of these start charts are in here right now, but they are getting updated. Here's a start chart for every team this year. So you can see Michigan, have they started the same offensive line all year? Look at that. All starters all the way through Wisconsin. We'll keep updating them all season long. You can see who started in every game, both offensively and defensively. Players for the year will be noted in red if they're out for the year. So that's another nice thing to have. And the last 40 years' results. Takes you back to 1976. You want to know a score or a spread on any game? A bowl game since 1976. That's 42 years ago. It's all here. Plus down here, who the coach was of the team, the record was, conference record, overall record. It's at your fingertips on all FBS teams. All right, let's get Detroit up here now so we can wrap this thing up. Take the Detroit Lions, put them on the page, and Vikings on the page. Detroit got off to a decent start. Beat New England, beat Green Bay. But they did beat Miami on the road. Their last game against Seattle, they were minus 82 yards per game. And something I want to point out here yardage-wise, their last 4 games, minus 32. That Green Bay game, they were minus 257 yards. Remember, Green Bay missed 4 field goals, 2 extra points, something like that? They were plus 135 against Miami and minus 82 against Seattle. So over the last 4 weeks, Detroit is minus 18 yards per game. The Vikings just had a 153-yard edge on the powerful Saints. They did lose by 10 at home, but I got to like a team that gets a 27-17 first down edge, 423, 270-yard edge. Their defense, they had a couple of bumps in the road. The Rams are going to put up yards against anybody, but they, after that loss against the Rams, they beat the Philadelphia Eagles on the road and had the yardage edge. In fact, the Vikings over the last 4 weeks are plus 90 yards per game, so they're better current form. They're prior to a bye. They've actually covered their last 9 prior to a bye. They're a great home favorite. Despite this loss to Buffalo here, which was, wow, I can't even explain that. 16-4-1 as a home favorite. Now, my computer's got this game 30-20. I was surprised the Vikings are only a 5-point favorite. You would have to figure they'd be at least a 7-point favorite at home, especially off a loss. They are on the season are plus 49 yards per game, and they've taken on the 16th toughest schedule. Detroit is plus 6 yards per game. They've taken on the number 29 toughest schedule. So the tougher schedule, better numbers, at home, off a loss, with a bye on deck. I'm going to take the Vikings minus 5 as this week's NFL play. Remember, if you use the code word TACKLE at InsideThePressBox.com or here on Phil Steele Plus, the Phil Steele Plus will take you from $39 down to $29. The code word TACKLE on InsideThePressBox.com, which will get you all my college games, all my NFL games, normally $29.99, just $9.99 this week. Code word this week is TACKLE. Overall record, 25-11-1 the last 4 weeks. Let's go get them this week. There's your 8 plays for this week.